no doubt that all of us know very well the opening words of the Bible, which says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And the story about Divine Mother has been told several times, where the messenger came to her and gave her a word, which was a key that opened the consciousness of whoever came into her presence. We could ask ourselves, what is this word? There are several very simple stories that lead us more able to delve into what have been called the mysteries that are hidden in plain sight until we no longer need to see by the light of our sensory awareness, or in other words, our mind. The first story is an old story about Mullah Nasruddin. Now, there was that time when a seeker after truth heard of how Mullah was a great mystic. So he made the very arduous journey to find the Mullah. But the Mullah at this time was on retreat up in a cave in a high mountain. So not only did the seeker have the great adventures that were along the way, but he had to climb a mountain to get to where the Mullah was. But when he arrived there and was invited into the interior of the cave, there was the Mullah sitting cross-legged on the floor, blowing into his hands. Now, the seeker after truth was intrigued by this, so he asked the Mullah, "Mullah, Master, what kind of a spiritual ritual is it that you are undertaking?" And the Mullah said, "I'm just using my breath to warm my hands." So after sharing some pleasantries, the Mullah's wife brought in 2 bowls of steaming soup for the Mullah and his visitor, and immediately the Mullah lifted the bowl up to his mouth and started to blow on it. And so the seeker said, "Oh, Master, what ritual is it you're undertaking now?" And the Mullah said, "I'm using my breath to cool my soup." So the visitor, of course, began to think to himself, "Why did I make this long journey? This man is obviously mad. He blows for hot and he blows for cold." So as soon as he could make his leave, the seeker after truth left the Mullah's cave and staggered down the hill, scratching his head and questioning himself why he made that long journey for a madman. And then there's a little anecdote about the monk who was walking down the road when suddenly he passed a little shop that was selling fried eels. Now when he neared the shop, the aroma of this delicious frying fish reached his nostrils, so he stopped in front of the shop and took a deep, deep breath, savoring the delicious smells. And in that moment, a little boy came running out of the shop and ran up to the monk and said, "I saw you. I saw you. My father said that smells are our business and you're stealing our business." "Oh," said the monk, "I'm really very sorry about that." So he made a huge exhalation, and the little boy trotted off back into the shop, quite happy. And the old monk thought to himself, well, perhaps this young boy has learned one of the fundamental lessons of life that might come to him later in his life. And then there's a story about a young girl called Esther, and she and her family were very poor, so Esther used to make brooms. She would gather straw and bundle them up into brooms of all different sizes and take them to the market to sell, to help her to sustain her family. And one day, after a day of selling her wares, having collected her little bag of coins, as she was walking down the road, she came to a baker's shop. And, of course, as she was nearing the shop, there were the delicious smells of the pastries and the bread that reached her nostrils. So she stood outside the baker's shop and breathed in these delicious aromas. And the baker, of course, saw her doing this, so he immediately came out and said, "You owe me? You have to pay me for this?" And Esther said, "You mean to say that I have to pay for breathing?" And the baker used his argument that the smells were because of his efforts that he'd made in baking all this food, and she'd taken in that smells. That was a transaction, so she owed him money. So a crowd gathered around to argue about who was right about that. Some said that she should pay, and others had the argument no. So it was decided that they would have to consult the king, who happened to be King Solomon at the time. So when King Solomon was called and listened to both sides of the story and pondering on this, he said, yes, indeed, she has to pay. And this was quite a great shock for everyone. But then King Solomon turned to Esther and said, "Take out your money bag." So Esther did, and he said, "Now, rattle it." And so she did. And so King Solomon turned to the baker and said, "Yes, the transaction has been completed. You have been paid with the sound of money." So as these simple stories lead us into the mysteries, the mystery that's behind those words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the stories, it's a specific story of Divine Mother being given a word, a single word that was a key. So this leads us deeper into our delving. The answer to the mysteries, the mystery that can only be learned when we no longer need to see by the light of existence, by the light of mind, by the light of sensory awareness. Where is this leading us now? What is it that when we look at this deep, deep mystery, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Where will it take us? And how can we delve? How can we explore without the power of mind? What is this place that we can claim, that we arrive at when we no longer need to see by the light of existence?